So hi everyone and welcome to tomorrow's transactions webinars, and on this edition we're going to be talking to Compass Plus about processing and about the differences between SaaS and PaaS. So everything is AAS these days, isn't it? It's software and platforms and payments and banking as services. And hopefully in today's session my colleague Gary will be able to chat through the differences and why you may choose a particular operating model to another operating model. So Gary, without further ado, I'll hand over to you and I look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Claire. So it's also a pleasure to be here with Maria and Bethan to talk about software as a service, platform as a service, and what is the right model for processors when they're looking for these services. I'll start off with having everyone just introduce themselves and then we'll go back in. So I'm the Technical Director at Consult Hyperion, and Maria?
I'm the Managing Director and EVP of Compass Plus Technologies.
Bethan?
I'm Vice President of Business and Market Development at Compass Plus Technologies.
Super, yeah. So this started off as you asked us to produce a white paper on looking at the differences between SaaS and PaaS, software as a service and platform as a service. And as we went through it, we actually found it's quite difficult to put those definitions in place. And as it evolved, it actually became more apparent it's about helping organizations choose the right model for them and for their processing needs. So let's wind it back to the start, and as we go through, we'll basically follow the path that we went through. But let's go back to the basics. What is SaaS and what is PaaS? Beth?
Okay, so SaaS is most probably the one that everyone thinks is outsourcing. When you go to a processor and you have your requirements, your set of requirements, the delivery model that they're going to generally offer you is SaaS. So basically the key characteristic of SaaS is that it's a multi-tenanted environment. You've got the processor running on a single application. It's got multiple financial institutions on there and a single database, a common database, which is partitioned so the data is all kept separately. But not all SaaS delivery models in modern day are necessarily created equal anymore. They very much depend on the technology that underpins them. So we would argue that actually there isn't necessarily a standard SaaS model anymore, which is obviously where our discussions with you came from.
Yeah.
I think I'll add to this as well. I think the very standard SaaS model that I think majority of people will be thinking about is where if you want a different product or service out in the market, you are joining the change request procedure and you are joining that queue with the process. Yeah. It's very little that an FI can change on their own. I think that's probably the standard definition of SaaS, but as Bethan said, not anymore.
The platforms are all changing. So, but this is all about outsourcing. This is when a financial institution takes the decision to outsource its processing for whatever reason. But is this a trend in all the markets, or are there some outsourcing and some going back in-house?
And the trend to outsource goes in cycles, and it's not necessarily the same worldwide. It changes from region to region, even country to country. Like all trends, it kind of cycles around requirements, technologies, because everything evolves at different paces in different geographies. Typically, it's always been you choose whether to outsource or whether to have things in-house, but it's no longer the case. It's no longer all or nothing. There's so many shades of grey in between where you basically can alleviate the majority of pain points by outsourcing part of your business. And it's this kind of flexibility that financial institutions aren't necessarily always aware of.
Yeah, I guess this is part of the problem, isn't it? Maria, sorry.
I wanted to add, I think in the past, I'm just going to add to what Bethan said. we've always seen that there are cycles. People get tired of outsourcing. They go, no, that's it. Want more control, start bringing everything in-house. Then they go, no, it's too expensive. I really didn't get out what I wanted out of in-house. Let's start outsourcing. And that cycle is about, give or take, 10 years. But in the last, I'd say, 7 years, we have seen that cycle sort of broke a little bit. And what Bethan said is now we see financial institutions trying to create a blend. Some things stay in house, something become outsourced. But with the development of technologies that underline the processor, there are a lot of other variations to services that are being introduced in the market. But from what we see our prospects are asking, what FIs are shopping for, it's quite obvious that they don't know it yet. That's why we've done this white paper.
Yeah, I guess that's the challenge, isn't it? Because the options are, as Bethan says, there's shades of grey, and you can mix between how much you do in-house and how much the processor does for you. But when you're seeing the RFIs and RFPs coming at you, is it I want to do SaaS or I want to do PaaS without a full understanding of it all?
I would say absolutely. 100%. When RFPs, RFIs come in, I'm going to be generalizing here, so please, I apologize in advance, but you tend to either get people that come in with a checklist of what they want. They're not dismissive of the underlying technology, but they're not thinking about it. It's not at the forefront of their mind. So they've got a list of what they can do currently, and what they want to do is the same, but on something new or faster. There's a few variables, but nothing major. But what they're omitting from with this tick box exercise is generally looking at the how things are done, and that's kind of missing. So when people come in, they generally assume that SaaS is the model that would happen. The people that come in for PaaS there are two types. There are people that have heard of PaaS and don't believe their current SaaS is providing what they need. They don't want SaaS anymore. They're not moving, changing, or adapting, or having the vendor independence or level of control that they want. So they immediately assume they must jump to PaaS, which is, as we're going to keep delving into, not necessarily the case. Or you have people who are very much groundbreaking and want to change the payments world and do something very different, and they know what PaaS is and they only want PaaS. That at a very high level are the kind of things that come to us, but generally the majority would jump on the PaaS bandwagon just because they're unhappy with their level of SaaS.
Right, so they're looking for more capability and they don't believe SaaS can provide that for them.
Often, yes.
Yeah, but Maria, you always say that there are plenty of really good SaaS platforms out there.
There are a lot of SaaS platforms out there. I'll just add something to what Bethan said. When FIs come to us, and the majority they just want SaaS, that's the outsourcing, the synonyms basically.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, so this is the wish list. They usually have, our current processor doesn't do this, that, and we want to do that. There's really not a very big list, and quite a lot of the time, what we see is it's transactions per second. So current processor does not provide X amount of transactions per second, and we're having some kind of issues. It's more operational. So that is as close as it gets to, I want to change not the processor, but the platform the processor operates on. Because the products are still, give or take, satisfies them, but it's the operational part that isn't. And how fast can you get products onto the market? Change requests. Mm-hmm. So then we come to the the group of FIs that Bethan referred to that want PaaS, there are a few around. Some of them say, so that's it. We're done with the queues. We want our products faster to the market, or they've come up with something quite innovative, and or they have, transaction per second, don't want to share my environment with anybody else. Some do say, we want to be a bit more vendor independent. That's what PaaS does for us, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But we've never, I'd say not once, seen someone who goes, I want PaaS for these particular reasons. I've thought about it, and this is exactly what I want for this particular product or service I want to get out to the market. That is rarity.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen often at all. So when we start talking to these guys, we try to figure out what is it that they're actually trying to achieve. And in absolute majority of cases, we still say to them, you need to go to SaaS. Obviously, these guys go, oh, no way, because this is not achievable, that's not achievable. And then there's a list of everything they think is not achievable on SaaS. But this is the problem, because it is achievable on SaaS systems that are running on modern technology.
Yeah.
So that's why SaaSes have moved on. So you used to have, let's go like really old days, I'm not going to name brands, God forbid. But, something that's been, say, technologies that have been developed late 80s, very early 90s, let's call it first gen systems. You really cannot, as an FI, you get given a service, you can't change anything at all. You can't even change a parameter. Everything is via change requests. I think you can't even say add a new ATM or board a new merchant. It's that restrictive. But those systems are really of the past now. There's some dotted around, we know, because we have FIs migrating from those systems, so they do exist. They do. So the next, say, majority of what SaaSes are offered on is, let's call it second-gen systems. And second-gen systems are usually those platforms that have been developed in like hardcore 90s. Some may be slightly touching early 2000s, but usually it's the systems of the 90s. There are a lot in the market. They're used by processors. They are used in houses. They still got quite years to go. They've been improved, try to move into the new age of, e-commerce and all of that. It's hard, but we're not going to go into that. But there's a lot more that's achievable on those systems. You can, as an FI, go in and change some parameters within a product, but you cannot create new products. Yeah. And again, I'm generalizing because maybe on the edges, especially if the platform was developed like into a bit early 2000s, maybe you can do a bit more, but eventually you are restricted. There is a ceiling of what an FI can do on their own. Now, if we take SaaSes that are built, let's call it third-gen systems. So third-gen systems are those who've been, developed in say from 2005, maybe 2010, launched in 2010 onwards. Yeah. So those are the systems that are, they're built API first. They are cloud ready. They do something that systems of the 90s were never designed for ever. And now those systems allow you to do a lot more on SaaS. You can create a lot more products on your own. You do not need to get into change requests. You do not need to join the queues. I would like to give an example, I guess.
This is what you mean about levels of vendor independence.
Absolutely, absolutely. So on third gen, so a processor that's running on this third gen system would allow financial institution to be a lot more independent. And this is what we see when prospects come to us and go, we want PaaS. And then they explain why. We go, no, you You need SaaS.
You need a good SaaS system, a third-gen SaaS system will
because
give you...
not only it covers what you're asking for, it will cover into the future, into the next 5 years easily what you want. Because we're speaking to business people, and they would ask, well, you know, say they want a prepaid product out in the market, and they have a vision for a couple of different prepaid products. Usually when everything is set up, we will set up those products for them, or a processor running third-gen system, they will set it all up. But later on, what happens? So second-gen SaaS, you can tweak some parameters easily, usually. Third-gen SaaS, it works on templates and inheritance functions. So you, for lack of better words, and may all developers and technicians out there watching this forgive me, it's like cut and paste. So you take, you inherit the product, you can change all sorts of parameters within the template. And for a business person, it becomes a completely different product. So you can get it to the market. Wow. Get your testing cycle right within a day. Yeah.
Bethan, you talk about this, and you call it an instant innovation.
It's basically that, it's that idea of being able to move and be agile and develop things very quickly, respond to the market very quickly. And we were talking about this the other day, just about with these younger generations and with things, the way things are moving, and the competition in the market today, these younger neobanks running on these third-gen platforms, they have this agility, and they'll bring something out, you know, the next week. COVID happens, and the next week there's some kind of product that can help adapt with that, whether it's helping people who can't leave their house pay for groceries, or, you know, someone else having prepaid cards or debit cards joined, and not just on the issuing side either, but it's also but then you get your more brick and mortar banks, and they've come up with this same idea, but it doesn't come into fruition until 6 months later.
And this is where, as Maria was saying, where you've got to go through this change control process rather than just being able to inherit an existing product and change what it does and develop and release new products.
Yeah, it's a combination of that, and also sitting in that development queue of the processor.
Yes.
So if you can do it yourself, you're really cutting out the middleman and a lot of time.
So it gives you a bit more control over what you can do, and what control your own product roadmap, if you like.
Yeah, for sure.
But I want to give another example. So with prepaid, and I think this probably would highlight to many just how powerful the SaaS on third generation can be. So prepaid products, you know, you can have, for example, your original idea was some kind of a new, I don't know, closed loop prepaid product out there. That's what you entered the market, you reap the benefits, everything's great, but then you want to move on. And then if you want to then go for unrestricted loop, single use, multiple use, renewable, non-renewable, all of that is achievable by financial institution and so on. You do not need to go to processor at all. So to many, this is, well, I know for a fact because I speak to a lot of financial institutions. To many, it's mind-blowing. I would use that word. They go, really, we don't need to. Yeah, we will train you how to, so you don't break things. Then you can do it on your own. You just inherit the original product. You change some parameters within the template. Off you go. I mean, obviously, it's still SaaS, so there is a ceiling somewhere. So if you want creating a new template, so with new restriction limits, all of those things, or adding additional fees, because much more of a change to a product, then you still need to go to processor, because ultimately you're on a multi-tenanted system and you can't go in and start fiddling with things because, you know, there are other tenants to be worried about.
Other tenants using it. So, but SaaS and PaaS has implications on the level of resource and capabilities that an organization needs to have. So if you talk about the neobanks, if they're starting off small and they may start off on a SaaS program and think they may want to move to PaaS. But the move to PaaS isn't just change of moving from a single tenant, a multi-tenant to a single tenant system, they've got it's a change in the capability of the organization. So what do they need? What's the differences there?
Well, there are numerous differences, I guess, on a very high level. It's the fact that, you know, you're then giving you're giving up. Oh, let me think of how to say this properly. So instead of having someone servicing everything for you, looking after everything for you, you're going to have to take on that responsibility yourself.
Yeah.
You need way more staff, way more different types of staff. You need skilled people who can run the system. You have to do a lot more yourself. So that level of vendor independence comes with not being dependent on the vendor. It's very simple. So you're losing that safety net. So and these resources cost money, and it takes time, and people need to be trained. And it's essentially, it's like having your own in-house platform, but outsourced. It is in the name. The platform is yours to look after.
Yeah.
So I'd add a little bit here as well. So when we see FIs coming to us and go, right, that's it, we're done. Usually the what makes them done with SaaS is that they want to control everything themselves. Yeah. They have ideas for more interesting products. They want them out into the market quicker. So they come to us. Obviously, the first thing we say, guys, it's going to cost a lot, because you losing every single economy of scale possible, because this is now your own. You're not sharing anything. So every cost of separate database, separate instance, it's all yours now. I'd have to say majority would go, yeah, no, we understand that. However, when we calculate, and usually the request is, could you still quote us for SaaS? Because we explain, you potentially can achieve this on SaaS. So they go, okay, let's have quote for SaaS and PaaS. And then I see the difference. I have to say at least 50% go, oh, that's expensive. Yeah. I don't think realization is quite with everyone there when they go, yeah, that's it, we need PaaS. Of course, it's still cheaper than having an in-house system. Yeah. No doubt, yes.
But a lot of that expense is actually just having your own database. It's the hardware expense.
Database, yeah. But obviously what the difference between PaaS and an in-house system is that the infrastructure is still run by processor. So you don't need to hire resources. And processor uses the same resources to run multiple systems. So there's a little bit of, that cost saving through that. But let's talk about the other 50% who go, right, no, we figured the cost is correct, okay? So then we go, right, well, you want to be vendor independent on the application level. Yes, we do. They say, yeah, fantastic. So we go, well, you need all application administrators. You need to upgrade the system, run it, test it. It's all yours now. I have to say that at least another 50% of that 50, another 25 altogether go, oh, is that what application administration involves? We go, yes, that's the vendor independence. It comes at that cost.
I guess this testing is part of the time that it takes when they're relying on the vendor to do the changes for them.
Yes, because it's not just enough to configure something. You then need to test it and make sure that it's working and that it's not breaking something that stands next to it. Well, it's a usual release cycle and, how you test. I don't think understanding's there. And I would say only the remaining 25% of the people who think they want PaaS are actually PaaS. They are at that level. They understand the resources, but usually we are talking about FIs that are pioneers, the market disruptors. They will churn those products out that make the rest of the market look like followers. Yeah. We're talking about those kind of guys, yes. PaaS.
These are guys that get proper vision and they want to change stuff, they want to move.
They are basically FIs who are ready for in-house, but they still want the cost savings.
Yeah. So the cost savings is what, looking at core processing and
it's infrastructure. So
yeah,
you don't need to bother with, say Amazon, for example, or your own endpoints, or say operating system administrators. Database administrators are still coming from the processor side, and processor does offer economies of scale because, as I said, those resources are used across multiple either PaaS platforms or SaaS platform that processors running. So there is definitely cost saving there versus the in-house.
There's
right.
also
So,
a saving associated with time. This
yeah.
is already set up. You're not building it from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess then we've got the true innovators who really need the PaaS platform because they are completely independent and they've got their mindset for how they're developing that. Where does that sit between financial institutions? Are we talking 20%, 10%, 25%?
We tried. Bethan and I tried to put a number to it. Obviously, we can only say from what we see.
Yeah.
From the requests that we receive, and we receive requests from all over the world. So it's not just Europe, it's Asia, it's Middle East as well. So we've got maybe a good idea, but I would say out of the requests for outsourcing, I'd say about 30% come to us for PaaS, 70 still want SaaS. So out of 30% that we see, I think 7 top 10 actually need PaaS.
Right. Yeah.
But
So it's a really quite a distinct area, distinct group of the market who are sitting there. Everyone else is, I don't want to say generic in what they're doing, but the SaaS and the third generation SaaS provides an awful lot of capability. Now, one of the things we spoke about in the past about third generation systems is user-defined functions. Now, those are more in the PaaS world than the SaaS world. Is that right?
So user-defined functions are the ultimate customization facility, let's say, so unfortunately, user-defined functions stay on the PaaS territory. You can't really do that on SaaS. So SaaS, whether second, third generation, doesn't matter. It stays within parameters and how much you can change those. Inheritance functions are all absolutely great in third gen SaaS. But user-defined functions, now that goes into PaaS. You need your own system, and you need to be able to use user-defined functions on their own. I mean, because user-defined functions are obviously accessible to the processor, the people who run the platform. And in SaaS environment, if something very unique needs to be developed, you just join the queue, create the change request, and the processor will, by use of utilizing user-defined functions, will be able to create very unique products for you on SaaS third gen. I mean, again, I don't want to bring down the second gen SaaSes, because that is also achievable on second gen. Only on third gen it's faster. Yeah, that's ultimately what it is.
And I guess on third gen it can be for one FI rather than across the whole platform.
Yeah, just for one, because the access and user rights can control, everything is controlled and defined. But that's the beauty of SaaS, and we see there's a confusion over that as well.
Yeah.
You can have a very unique product on SaaS. Yes, you have to still create it with processor. You can't do it on your own, but you can have a completely unique product. And I think when usually what we see, and this is the confusion, FIs who come to us and go, "Oh, we need something very unique. That's why we need PaaS." And we go, "But why? We can do that you can have it, because the understanding in the market, and that's very clear, that SaaS multi-tenanted, which it is, you can't, that is solid definition or part of it. But another one, that you have to have relatively standard products on SaaS. You don't. You can have absolutely unique product, but on SaaS.
I can really see where you're coming from now with shades of grey, because it's really complicated, and the boundary before when you have to move to PaaS is quite far to the side, isn't it?
Yes, it is quite far.
But it's again.
Oh, sorry.
So no, Nico, sorry.
I think that's just the danger. It's just having this knowledge and this information available to you, that things aren't black and white. And just because you've used SaaS before doesn't mean that that's what you're going to get if you go for a different processor with different SaaS capabilities, with the technology underneath it. I think people often think about kind of what their checklist is, but not actually of what they can do, rather than what they want. And it's the technology that enables you to do what you want now and what you want in the future. And that's why it's so important to educate everyone that it's not just this option A and option B.
Yeah,
you can do so much in between, and it's what's best for you as a company as well.
And I think that's what the white paper's trying to draw out, is trying to explain there isn't just a SaaS PaaS decision. It's a decision on capabilities and understanding of capabilities and understanding of what it means to an organization.
And in that, it's not even about outsourcing, really. If you look at the broader picture, it's keeping some things in-house, outsourcing others. There's a multitude of options out there.
What we see is also, which is a little bit, I'd say sad, really, that financial institutions do not want to look at the underlying platforms, because we all know, in a great majority of cases, once you sign a contract with a processor, you are locked in for 5 years. So having a little list of features and businessy kind of products that you want to achieve, well, you achieve that in a year. What are you going to do for the next 4? Why isn't anyone asking what the processor is running on? I have no idea.
Yeah, so I guess
bring this to the market out there and just ask everyone to really consider what is it that you are getting yourselves into. Because we also see there is obviously FIs on the cusp. They might want to start with SaaS, and for next 2-3 years, that will see them through. But maybe midway through their term with processor, they want to start experimenting and seeing maybe some of this they can take to PaaS. So a very good processor will let you move between SaaS and PaaS and decouple the system and move some to PaaS, but leave the rest on SaaS. Generally speaking, commodity services never need to be on PaaS. We've seen that, it's rare, but we did come across guys who were going, I want my entire system on PaaS. And we go, why? Why do you want your switch on PaaS? What will PaaS achieve for you on your switch? How are you going to differentiate?
A switch is a switch. You're not going to innovate on a switch.
No. But we had those requests who go, no, that's it. I have the money, I have the resources, I want the whole thing on PaaS. No, you don't need to. That's waste.
Oh, yeah, so I guess then what it really comes down to is that it's about educating the FIs as to what they really need and helping them make that right decision. But I guess if you look at it, the speed of innovation in payments at the moment is terrific. There's so much going on, and you need to be thinking in 3, 4, 5 years time, what am I going to be doing? What are my products going to look like? Am I going to need CBDCs? Am I going to need to process whatever coin is the flavor of the month? How am I going to process in the metaverse? All that, But you need to understand that in 4 or 5 years time, you're in a different place and you need a platform which is going to be enabling you to get there. And so that gives the FIs, they really need to think really hard about what level of control they need to meet their needs, what level of control or what level of innovation is really for them and the capabilities they need to do that versus what the platforms can do for them in that space.
Yes.
And that's a really difficult thing to get across. So I guess this sort of hybrid start on 3rd gen SaaS, and if you really want to innovate, take that innovation onto PaaS. That can be quite powerful.
Yes.
Tool in that space.
I mean,
So,
in the modern day world, basically every year payments has a new word. But for the last 5, I think all anyone's been talking about is flexibility. And if you want to be able to maneuver and change and adapt, you just need to have a processor that's flexible enough to enable you to, and you need to have a flexible vision as well of what you want to achieve. And it's only by looking at all of the options and not making assumptions, because things are evolving and changing every day, including payments platforms, underlying technologies and options. So FIs just need to go out there, check all of their options before they start making these big decisions based on what they've done before.
Yeah, it's almost choose your platform for 4 or 5 years from now. Don't choose your platform for what you want to do today.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Maria, Bethan, thank you very much for a fascinating conversation. What I would say to everyone is go to Compass Plus website or Consult Hyperion website. The white paper helping you to making the right decision will be on our websites. Download it, have a read through, understand more about what we've been discussing today. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you
very much.